The United Kingdom government system started long before the United States government. In comparison, the UK government is approximately 800 years old when it transferred over from a monarchy. And throughout the centuries, it has transformed and evolved, and currently it is a unitary democracy. And in comparison to the United States, we began in 1776, and with our secession from Britain, ironically. And currently, we've always been a democracy, but not really due to like slavery and stuff. And then moving on to the system of the United Kingdom, they have a bicameral house as we do. The two houses are the House of Lords, which is composed of 779 members, and the House of Commons, which is composed of 650 members. Our United States counterparts to those are the House of Representatives, which is composed of 435 members, and the Senate, which is composed of 100 members. They also have a key figure, as we do with our president. They have a prime minister, and the main place that they meet is called the Palace of Westminster, which is their meeting place, just like the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. And moving on to their constitution, they don't necessarily have a single document that sort of mimics a constitution like we do. So the U.S. is based off one document that was written when we were just becoming a country, but now it's sort of, well, like, they don't necessarily tweak it, but they can kind of change some things. And with the United Kingdom, they have basically their main document was the Magna Carta, which in the beginning began to limit the king's power. And then ever since then, they've had a lot of documents that have influenced their sort of constitution. So they have limits to the power of the monarch. There's not necessarily a single document. And then there's the Bill of Rights, which they had in 1689.
The largest and arguably most important branch of the United Kingdom's government is the legislative branch. It is made up of two houses. It is a bicameral legislature. The higher house is the House of Lords, and it is comprised of 845 nobles and high-ranking bishops in the church. These members of the House of Lords are appointed by the Queen, and they're not elected by the people. The House of Commons is the lower house. It is comprised of 650 seats, which are voted in every 5 years. The House of Commons makes the majority of the laws that are passed in Britain. Anything that is passed in the House of Lords, even though the House of Lords is the higher party, they have way less power than the House of Commons. So anything the House of Lords does, the House of Commons can overrule. The leader of the majority party in the House of Commons is the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is the head executive of the United Kingdom's government. The Prime Minister is also referred to as the government. The Prime Minister picks members of his cabinet. The cabinet is 20 members of the highest ranking officials in the government. And even though the Prime Minister is the leader of the cabinet is considered equal to the Prime Minister. The cabinet makes decisions on its own, like as a whole. So the Prime Minister is never really acting on his own. Still part of the executive branch, there are 3 governments that kind of function as state governments, and they're the Scottish government, the Welsh government, and the Northern Ireland government. The Scottish government has its own parliament and has a member of that parliament appointed by the Queen as its first minister, which is like a governor, and that handles Scottish healthcare, education, justice, and transport. The Northern Ireland government is similar to Scottish, and the Welsh is similar, but it has less power. The judicial branch is relatively new to the United Kingdom's government. Before 2009, all judicial proceedings were handled by a small committee in the House of Lords, and they would function as like the high court in the land Now, as of 2009, there was a Supreme Court established, so the United Kingdom has a Supreme Court very similar to that of the United States. And there are smaller courts that act kind of like state courts in the United States, in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
Elections in the UK are run very differently than they are in the US. For one thing, their elections, which is just came up in 2011, they are voted in every 5 years and instead of every 4. And at every 5 years, not only is a new prime minister, which is kind of like the president of the United States, is reelected, but also the whole House of Commons is also reelected. And the way that the election works there is people vote for people who they want in parliament. They don't necessarily vote for the president or the prime minister himself. Instead, whoever wins the majority of the vote of parliament the leader of that party becomes the prime minister, and he's appointed by the queen. Elections are held on the first Thursday of May. This year, May 7th was the first Thursday, and it was election year. And the majority of the party that won was the Conservative Party. For the past 5 years, it's been a hung parliament, which means that there is not a majority in the House or in the government of a party at all. And David Cameron won he's the prime minister, but his party won the election, so now they have the majority of the vote, which is something that they haven't had, so that's something new for the